Chicago Fire is bound to repeat Halstead and Upton's utterly disrespectful breakup in Chicago PD. Chicago Fire Season 14 is bound to repeat Chicago PD's frustrating Haley Upton and Jay Halstead split. This type of breakup is something we've seen plenty of times in the One Chicago universe, with Chicago PD offering one of the most disrespectful breakups of all time. As Chicago PD's Halstead and Upton got close, it was clear there was a romance on the cards. They even got married in their own way, bringing the union that we fought hard to see. Halstead's departure led to everything changing, and instead of showing us that a long-distance relationship can work, the show destroyed the relationship. This is something that Chicago Fire Season 14 runs the risk of doing, especially based on the track record of other Dick Wolf Universe TV shows. However, there is a way that the series could avoid such a problem. Ahead of Chicago PD Season 10, Jesse Soffer announced that he was leaving the series. We got to see a 3-episode exit storyline, but the issues for Halstead and Upton came after that and mostly off-screen. Halstead chose to re-enlist in the Army, and he ended up off the grid. It was only supposed to be for one term, but Chicago PD changed his character by having him completely ghost Upton as she tried to talk with him. He didn't even tell her personally that he was upping his commitment to the Army. It broke everything that Halstead and Upton had fought for up to this point. In the end, Upton chose to serve divorce papers, realizing that she couldn't keep holding on to the man she loved, leaving viewers without full closure for Halstead and Upton. There wasn't even a reason to do it this way, as a lot of people make a long-distance relationship work with someone in the military. Military spouses can have communication problems, but successful relationships work through them. Upton could have mentioned she'd spoken to Halstead to show their relationship was working. The Chicago Fire Season 13 finale saw Carver and Violet finally get back together. It had been a long wait, but it came with the knowledge that this relationship wasn't going to work. Before the year-ender, however, we learned that both Jake Lockett and Daniel Keary were leaving the series. There is a chance that Chicago Fire will at least offer some exit storylines. Lockett could appear in the first couple of episodes to set up a goodbye, as we already know that he put in a request to transfer to Denver, and he didn't say that he had pulled that request. With the exit, though, there isn't a chance to establish Carver and Violet as a couple. They're going to end up splitting for no real reason, disappointing those who had been ready for them to get back together. At least if they had been together for the season and showed they were struggling, we could accept that a long-distance relationship didn't work. We need time to see Violet and Carver together, but that can't happen. The only way that a breakup could be respectful is if there are phone calls or text messages between them that show they have tried but can't make it work. Chicago Fire owes it to us to be more respectful ending this relationship after waiting so long. There is a way to change it all, and that's to create a successful long-distance relationship between Carver and Violet. While these types of relationships are hard, they're not impossible. There could be a long-term plan for Carver and Violet to be together, which allows us to believe that they can make it. Sadly, the Dick Wolf universe hasn't had the best track record when it comes to long-distance relationships. Chicago Fire tried after Casey left just after getting together with Brett, but it was clear from Brett's conversations with Violet and Kid that it wasn't easy, and they were on the verge of a breakup. It was only when Kara Kilmer chose to leave the series that Chicago Fire's Brett and Casey were able to be happy together. Brett moved to Portland to be with Casey, but they did get their wedding on screen. Perhaps One Chicago is planning something similar for Carver and Violet, although it could only happen if the latter ends up leaving Firehouse 51 as well. This would make their proposed reunion bittersweet rather than just plain joyful. After all, Violet is a beloved long-term member of the team. In Chicago Med, Natalie Manning and Will Halstead broke up after Natalie left the hospital. It was only after Will decided to resign that we learned the two had been back in touch, and he moved to be with her. With past experiences, it's hard not to expect the same for One Chicago. Heartbreak is inevitable, but some breakups leave more scars than others. Fans of Chicago PD still wince at the memory of Jay Halstead and Haley Upton's implosion. A rushed, off-screen, painfully impersonal send-off to a long-developed romance that deserved so much more. Now, all signs point to Chicago Fire being on a collision course with repeating that same mistake. This time with another beloved couple who've carried emotional weight and fan investment. Joe Cruz and Chloe Allen. Yes, Chicago Fire has a long history of powerful love stories. Casey and Dawson, Severide and Kid, even Gallo and Violet in their own chaotic way. But none are quite as steady and grounded as Joe and Chloe. Their relationship began with humble sparks, awkward dates and shy smiles, and blossomed into one of the show's most grounded partnerships. They endured trauma, parenthood, and the endless uncertainties that come with loving a firefighter. But now, storm clouds are gathering. The writing's on the wall. Behind the scenes, rumblings from the Chicago Fire writers' room suggest that season 14 will bring major emotional upheaval for Cruz. Actor Joe Manoso has hinted in interviews that his character will face new challenges that shake his foundation. While vague, this kind of language echoes eerily similar phrasing used before Halstead's departure from Chicago PD, where Jessley Soffer exited the series, leaving his character in emotional limbo and his romantic arc abandoned midair. Much like Halstead, Joe Cruz has always played the role of emotional anchor, loyal, selfless, and consistently available for those around him. And that's what makes his potential heartbreak all the more devastating. If the writers choose to remove Chloe, or worse, phase her out with minimal explanation, they'll be replicating the very formula that enraged Chicago PD viewers, building a strong emotional connection, and then discarding it with cold, clinical indifference. Deja vu in Firehouse 51. Let's rewind to what made Halstead and Upton's breakup so unbearable. After seasons of development, confessions, and commitment, Jay Halstead simply left. Viewers didn't even get a proper goodbye. Upton was left to deliver a brief, heart-wrenching monologue to Void about how Jay had chosen a life elsewhere. The audience was denied catharsis, closure, or a real emotional payoff. Now imagine that same narrative happening with Cruz and Chloe. A throwaway line about Chloe deciding to move in with her sister or take a job in Atlanta. A quick scene of Cruz wiping away a tear before suiting up for the next fire. That's the very definition of emotional malpractice. It would disrespect not only the character's journey, but the audience's investment in their love story. Cruz deserves better. Joe Cruz has always worn his heart on his sleeve. He's the guy who sings to kids in the truck, who cries when Bowden gives him praise, and who broke down when Otis died. Watching him grow into fatherhood, take leadership in Squad 3, and find real happiness with Chloe has been one of the show's most rewarding arcs. To rob him, and the viewers, of a proper emotional resolution would be a betrayal on par with Halstead and Upton's. Remember when Cruz proposed to Chloe after nearly dying in a fire? It was cinematic, emotional, worthy of the screen time it got. That's how a breakup should be handled too, if it's happening at all. It should be full of messy conversations, complicated feelings, and at least one scene that cuts us emotionally, but makes us feel like we witnessed a full-circle moment. Not a vague voicemail or a passing remark at Molly's. Where the writers could go right. It's not too late to steer this train away from the Halstead-Upton cliff. If Chloe is being written out, perhaps due to actress Kristen Gutowski's availability, or a shift in narrative focus, then let her and Cruz have a real breakup. Maybe it's about work-life balance. Maybe the stress of Cruz's job has become too much. Maybe she's struggling with postpartum depression or fears for his safety every time he suits up.